an explosion, not culturally, but medically. The things we don't know about the plant and the oils are so vast and so varied that the possibilities to me right now seem endless. And I'm not really into it, but I grew up watching wrestling, and RVD,
Yep.
if you've ever heard of his brands, he's been doing so much with it. Not culturally, but chemically, to the point where he went out, and I think he has an honorary master's degree just on his research with cannabinoids.
I gotta check that out, but I know he's deep into it. Yeah, I've interviewed him a few times over the years, and like he was regarded as one of the first guys who started getting the pro wrestlers to switch away from the addictive substances and the somas and all that stuff, and start looking into cannabis a little bit more and more.
And it boils down to the same thing, where cannabis used to have a terrible reputation, and as more people really looked at the actual plant instead of the culture, they were like, oh, wait a minute, I could have been wrong this whole time.
Yeah, and especially when the culture, a lot of it is just stigmas that they're put on with propaganda over time too. A lot of it is inaccurate, and I feel like at that time there's kind of the stigmatization of the culture actually overrode the true applications. And these thousands of years of plant practitioners have used this over years in different cultures over the world, and we're finally starting to thaw out of that prohibition now and slowly pull ourselves away from it.
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I agree with you, and I'm happy to hear everyone else is doing it too. Because in the cannabis world, everyone talks about it, but then when we get to the outside, it almost feels like a lot of times people don't really know too much about the plant or anything like that. And like I said, I have a family issues right now that are struggling with sleep, and it's like there's a cannabinoid called CBN that is really good for that, and even CBD in some form can work for that. So there's this one monolithic viewpoint of what cannabis isn't actually what it is, and there's so much world of possibility, like you were saying.
Yep.
So when
so much.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I'm not. You're the guest. Please go on.
There's so much that we don't know that it's easier to fixate on what we do know. But you'll never explore what's possible if you only fixate on the knowns. There's so many people that associate cannabis with just THC and the mental high that they completely ignore all the other applications for it.
Yeah,
and I think
crazy.
that's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
I think regardless, whether you're talking about cannabinoids or anything else, if you only focus on what you know, you can't grow.
Absolutely. And the thing with cannabis too is a lot of times what people claim to know isn't actually the information that's actually accurate or isn't fully accurate. And it's a really complex subject that I think is one that we're still learning about. And I think that it kind of brings it back to the video too, because it's not just complex issues like that. Like you were saying, sometimes it's people just cutting off and walking through videos and assuming that they're being malicious when in reality they might not have even known anything. So I think it's really interesting how it works on so many different levels. And before we dive back into that, I kind of want to incorporate the cannabis and psychedelics aspect to it, because I think you did kind of resonate with some folks that were a trippy community, or at least the higher sort of thinking mindset community. Do you use like you said, your cannabis isn't that big for you? Are you really big into substances at all, or how does that work for you?
So I've tried LSD before.
Mm-hmm.
That was one that I very much enjoyed my experience. I've tried magic mushrooms before. They don't agree with me, but I agree with them.
What's that like for you? What is that? If you can explain that.
The come up and just before the peak is a very enjoyable time. I'm very sociable. I enjoy it. As soon as I peak and I start coming back down, it is some of the worst experiences I've ever had with anything.
Really? Interesting. Just bad thoughts, bad feelings?
I think if you've partaken, a lot of the times you'll give yourself food poisoning as a side effect.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not very careful with your dosage, it can be easy to overindulge. So I think the associated feelings of having to throw up and that negativity draws me into myself. Then I isolate because I feel like I'm going to throw up. Then I isolate some more because I'm isolated and feeling terrible, and it spirals downward.
Oh, okay. So you kind of end up in a hole, kind of just in your own.
Yes, and the last time I partook, I had the I'm sure you've seen them, the like Belgian chocolate bars with the almost Illuminati symbol.
Mm-hmm.
I'm convinced they are significantly stronger than they say on the packaging.
Oh yeah, dude, those packages are not reliable.
They were like, oh yeah, if you want to have a borderline trip, eat 4. I was like, all right, I'll eat 2. I was the hardest I've ever tripped on anything.
Dude, yeah, I'm right with you there. I actually was going to go to, I don't know if you know this pro wrestling company called Kaiju Big Battle, but
I've heard
if,
of them.
okay, well, for anyone not aware, there's basically they dress up as like Japanese kaiju monsters and wrestle in a ring. It's a fucking show. Go watch them. But I went to do a microdose of mushrooms too. But my packaging said one was a microdose, you'll be fine, blah 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 blah. Up to three was a microdose. So I took one and a quarter or something like that. And I was walking from my apartment to the venue, and it was about 20 minutes. And all of a sudden, about 5 minutes from the venue, I thought I had to like shit my pants and sweat like in the worst possible way, and completely zapped and forgot that it was the mushrooms until like right after I hit my joint, and then I was like, oh shit, that's only going to make things worse. And now we're tripping right before this wrestling show. So I ended up spending about 20 minutes walking around outside of the venue, mentally preparing to go watch monsters wrestle for about 3 hours. But after that, it was great. But yeah, if you dose wrong or whatever, it can really lead to a bad time. So I don't know. I kind of at this point, I still like just using mushrooms or grinding them down into a powder even and just doing a micro, because I just don't trust any of the packaging label at this point.
Yeah, if you don't know somebody that really knows what they're doing with it, it can be very iffy. The active ingredient for it, though, I think could be a miracle drug in the future.
Oh
I
yeah.
think psilocybin could be the next penicillin, honestly.
There's a few of them that are on the come up too. Like who depending on who you talk to, it's psilocybin. Depending on who you talk to, it's LSD, it's mescaline, it's ketamine. There's a few that are coming up. The ibogaine, ayahuasca. There's so many that are coming up, and like I think you're right. And the hope is that a few of them actually end up becoming the next penicillins, and I think a few of them could help out a whole bunch of different conditions. And fingers crossed, man. I really think that
I'm sh
hopefully we're
I'm
pushed
sure you've
back.
seen the research on microdosing psilocybin and PTSD.
Which one? There's been a couple things. I don't know if a recent one.
Specifically, the one I'm thinking of is on soldiers returning from Afghanistan and Iraq.
What was the conclusion on it?
For the people that did it routinely and carried it on after the study, they've more or less completely recovered. They made it
Yeah,
part of their daily thing. They put it in their coffee in the morning, just a little vial, the same way you would liquid sugar, and they have no episodes. Not fireworks. They still enjoy shooting. They'll go to the gun range with their buddies and be completely fine. There's no triggers for them at
that's
all. That mental fear and break has been completely eradicated from them, and a handful of them were able to stop dosing and still not have the negative effects of the PTSD. It's almost like they were cured of it.
yeah. I've heard a lot of anecdotes and some studies over the years. I wasn't sure which one you were referring to, but yeah, it's the stories you hear from it from the veteran community as well as other folks with other sorts of trauma. It's amazing what it does to them. Like you said, some people it'll be a lifelong thing, but a lot of times from what I've heard is it's a shortened period. It could be a couple weeks, could be a couple months, maybe a few years. But a lot of times people do want it to be a reset, or even if not a reset, a recalibrate. And hopefully you won't have to be relying upon it, which is amazing too, because when you got all these pharmaceuticals out there, there's never a short term for these. It's almost always you're on it for life at this point, or here's some other detrimental effects and I'll go switch to another one. It doesn't seem that's the case with any of these sort of plant-based medicines for the most case, I should say.
That we know of so far.
Exactly. Yes. There does need to be more studies, and some certain things don't, or certain substances don't mix with certain conditions. But like I said, there's a world of possibilities out there. So it's really
Yep.
it's
I'm
amazing.
excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. So are you still actively with the psychedelics at all? Do you still dabble, or when was the last time you
Um,
kind of explored?
the last time I really explored was the really bad mushroom trip I was talking about. That
Mm,
was about 2 years ago, and it's more that I don't have the time to set aside for it that I would like to, than it is desire.
interesting.
I live just outside of Camden, so I could realistically get whatever I desired.
Right.
Like I know people, I worked landscaping, I'm from the area, I've lived in the greater Camden area for 20 years. I know
Right.
plenty of people. But for anybody that doesn't know, I believe it's mushrooms. If you're taking like regular mushrooms, you're just eating dried mushrooms, you can expect a 4 to 8 hour experience. And you
Yeah.
do not, when you're tripping, you do not feel hungry or thirsty. You just don't feel it. You'll get there, you just won't know you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
depending on that variety, it'll
LS
come knocking on your ass.
and LSD is a 12 to 16 hour experience at recommended dosage. And that's not including time before or time after for recovery. So really, you need a whole day for just that. And it's hard for me to that time when I have so many other things that need to be done.
I hear you, man. A writer, Patrick Marvellis, a really awesome dude out in Humboldt County. He was talking recently about the need to go on a trip, but he has two kids and he runs a farm. And it's like, dude, like, good luck to you to do anything. I mean, kudos to you that you're even awake right now. Like, as you get older and you have more responsibilities, you want to do those sort of things, but it is tough to find time for it. So
Yeah.
I think that's also why a lot of folks just turn to like cannabis and stuff like that because it is a shorter term relief or, not the same effect, but I think a lot of folks will use those interchangeably in that sort of belief. You said you're not really big into cannabis. Is that right?
Um, I don't know if that's fair to say.
Or you're
I
just
don't
not
really part
consuming much, I should say, or not partaking often?
socially, really. My girlfriend had spinal realignment surgery her freshman year of high school, so
Oh, shit.
she's really big into it. So when she's smoking, I'll sometimes take a puff here and there, but I've been around it my whole life.
Mm.
Anytime that I want to, I can. And because it was never like this forbidden thing in my life, it never had that stigma of I'm doing something I shouldn't. I've tried it. I've tried edibles. It's all right. It's not really for me. I don't know if it's the strain or whatever. CBD really agrees with me. I
Mm.
like
Interesting.
CBD. I like the edibles. I like the oils. But I know that's more the body and the relaxation.
The non-psychoactive sort of
I think
components.
it's the THC. I don't really like feeling super, I guess, slowed down. But that's
Interesting.
not every strain either.
No,
There's a
yeah.
difference in the different strains and the different ways it interacts. And I'm sure if I went to the dispensary and said, I want to feel this, this, and this, they'd be able to hook me up, right? I just haven't had a real desire to.
Yeah. Have you been to any of those New Jersey dispensaries at all? Have you checked them out?
I've checked them out just for the sake of checking them out. The way they're set up is fabulous. Never mind the actual product, because for the vast majority of people going, that product is going to be the best they can get.
Yeah.
If you're not already in the culture and you don't already know people, it's very hard to get high quality stuff that you can trust. Because everybody's out to make a quick buck, and I can't blame them for that. Everybody's trying to feed their families. I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that a lot of the people I grew up with that were dealing work in managerial roles for dispensaries now. Like
That's
they have a record, they have a rap sheet. A couple of them have federal charges, and they heard that it was going to be legalized. They went to these companies that were coming over from Colorado and said, "Listen, here's my rap sheet. Here's what I've been arrested for. I know what I'm doing," and they hired them on the spot.
yeah.
So now they get to do something they've always done and enjoyed on the legal side of things. And they're advocating for more and more of their friends that have non-violent crimes to come in and work with them. And I think it's done fantastic things for the community.